All right, while Serafín's setting up, I'm going to just introduce him briefly. Just let me scroll down through to his bio. I have it here. Here it is. Well, Serafín Alvarez, he is going to examine some of the implications of designing non-interactive video games through a posthumanist lens. Let me tell you a little bit about yourself. It's right here. He's an artist, researcher, and educator. He has a bachelor's degree in fine arts and a master's degree in artistic production and research from the University of Barcelona. And he's currently pursuing a PhD in design and communication at BAU, College of Arts and Design, also in Barcelona, with a practice-based research oriented towards the design and production of autonomous digital worlds using video game technology. At BAU, College of Arts and Design, he serves as both a faculty member and the head of the Composition and Languages Department. So, yeah, let's give a warm welcome to Serafín, and the floor is yours. Oh, you're having some trouble with that.
Yeah. Thank you.
We had the picture a second ago, right?
Yeah.
Could we see there what is happening with you have the...
Yeah, my computer is recognizing it, but for some reason it's not showing. Yeah. Oops.
Having tech issues at a gaming conference, I mean, it's part of it. It wouldn't be.
Yeah. Okay. Now it's okay. Hi, thank you. Good morning. My name is Serafín Alvarez. I'm an artist, teacher, and researcher. In this talk, I will share part of the ongoing PhD research that Federico talked about. I'm currently pursuing about College of Arts and Design in Barcelona. I will begin by showing two artworks that I made in the past. One of them included in this edition of Now Play This. Developing these artworks led my interest towards what is known as live simulations, a form of non-interactive video games, or video games, between quotes. I will show some examples, both my own and those of other artists and video game designers, and comment on some possible cultural implications derived from getting rid of interactivity and human players. Before starting, just a quick note. I would like to clarify that this is my first participation in an academic conference outside of my university, and I am doing, as you can hear, in a foreign language, so please forgive my if any stumbles that inexperience, language, or nerves might cause. And Now Play This, at the festival, I am showing a work titled Maze Walkthrough. It is a virtual maze that can be explored in first-person shooter style, but without shooting, action, missions, or objectives. It is a navigable. Here? No? Yeah, sorry. So it is a navigable 3D space through which you can walk, look, and listen. Very similar to a walking simulator. A peculiarity of this work, of Maze Walkthrough, is that the corridors that shape the maze are 3D reproductions of corridors from science fiction films. Maybe you can recognize some. You can walk through, for example, one of the characteristic hallways of Nostromo, the space in the Alien franchise, arrive at an intersection, and choose whether to turn right into a hospital hallway from the anime film Akira, that you will see right now, or left into a corridor of Matrix backdoors, to name a few examples. I conceived Maze Walkthrough based on the concept of liminality, which, as you know, is the theme of this year's edition of the festival, as well as this game studies track. I look at the corridors as a liminal architectural device, as in between spaces that connect other spaces. designed to go through them. And in a very similar way, I look at science fiction as a genre in which liminality is very present, with recurring themes such as journey or change. I made this artwork in 2014, 10 years ago. It was the first time I worked with video game technology. I have no prior training or experience in video game design, but for this particular project, it was important to give the audience control of the camera, allowing them to explore the corridors at their own pace. And the first-person video game format made this possible. It was a time, back then in 2014, when indie games had established, walking simulators were emerging, MoMA had acquired, as many of you know, MoMA had acquired video games for its collection, and the old debate about whether video games could be art had gained new momentum. In the immediately preceding years, games such as Journey, Dear Esther, Proteus, which is in the festival as well, Gone Home or the Stanley Parable were released, and a generation of contemporary artists who use game engines in their practice began to emerge. Maze Walkthrough was born in this context. While working on it, the possibilities and malleability offered by a game engine impressed me, and what was initially a specific need for a specific project has over time become a characteristic feature of my artistic practice, using game engines to build digital worlds. I shared Maze Walkthrough on the internet, available for free or pay what you want. And I also showed it at exhibition. I immediately noticed that the experience of playing it in one or another situation was very different. Downloading and playing it at home with your own computer was one thing, and playing it in the context of an exhibition was another. I was very satisfied with the former, but not always with the latter. It was okay in exhibitions where it was accompanied by other video games, as is the case here with No Play This. But on many occasions, I saw it in contemporary art exhibitions, which is the context in which I usually work. Most of the time, it was the only interactive piece in a given exhibition, and the fact that it required active participation, which is not usual in a contemporary art exhibition, seemed to me to take on excessive importance over other aspects. Depending on the context, venue, and audience, sometimes it worked better than others, from my point of view. Fast forward to 2018. I did a very similar artwork, Umbral, which by the way means threshold in Spanish. Liminality is also an important concept in this one. A first-person navigable 3D space, although in this case, instead of being a maze made up of different corridors, it was an island made up of diverse landscapes, also spaces taken from fiction. Motivated by the question raised when exhibiting Maze Walkthrough in contemporary art exhibitions that I mentioned before, I decided to make two versions of Umbral. One, an interactive version available for download, a standard version we could say, with which the user can explore the island freely, and an automated version for exhibition, Umbral Autoplay, which is what you can see, in which instead of a human player, a bot wanders around the island autonomously with a pathfinding system. This automated version fascinated me. It was an experience halfway between watching a film and playing a slow video game, similar in certain aspects to watching a video game streaming, but knowing that it was autonomous and self-contained. This fascination triggered me to become interested in the idea of automated play, and I decided to do a practice-based PhD thesis about it. Within the art world, some people call art games that play themselves live simulations. Obviously, I am not alone. I'm not the only one working around these themes. An example from the video games industry is the autoplay mode of David O'Reilly's Everything, that maybe some of you know. The game is about being many things. All the objects that surround you are capable of becoming an avatar, of being embodied and controlled by the player. who explores the different environments of this particular digital universe by becoming the objects that populate them. If the player does not press any input for a certain time, the autoplay mode is activated, with which the game continues autonomously, so the players can stop being so, and the game plays itself while the players relax or do other things. That was an example from the video games industry. An example from the art world is Ian Cheng's Emissaries, an art project about cognitive evolution structured in 3 episodes, in which a series of characters interact with each other and with their environment autonomously, similar to a video game world populated by NPCs, but without PCs, without players for that matter. Well, this is very dark, but you can imagine. An example from my own practice is Drift Viscous Dust, a project that I'm currently working on. It is motivated by how human beings abandon underground infrastructures once they have stopped using them, since it is cheaper to leave them down there, the infrastructures, that we do not see them, than to bring them to the surface and manage them. And from there, I imagine a fiction, a hypothetical future in which feral ecologies have emerged in those spaces. I have designed a series of environments and populated them with creatures that have different behaviors and interact with each other and with the environment autonomously. I have placed several cameras in each environment, and an automated system also changes cameras, similar to a fifth of security cameras. The spectrum of non-interactive video games is broader than what I just shown. Some genres that come to mind are zero-player games and idle games. For example, here I have only pointed out 3 examples that are most relevant to my research. In the field of academic research, it is worth highlighting the work of Sonia Fisek, who has been investigating non-interactive video games for several years. She proposes the concept playing at a distance, which is the title of her last book, or display, this as last play, to refer to a computer-mediated game mode in which the immediate action is delegated towards the machine, participating as one of many possible agents in a distributed algorithmic entanglement, which, I quote her, encourages thinking outside the primacy of the thumb, questioning agency and direct control, qualities that have been almost synonymous with video games and technology. In addition to this, there are other research studies that are providing useful insights for my PhD. Some of them now visible on the screen down there, but that I won't be commenting on since the time of my presentation is limited. The references will be in the last slides in case you're curious. Interactivity is one of the intrinsic and distinctive features of video games. However, the examples included in my presentation are not interactive. We could say that they are not video games. Also, for my research, I am not so interested in debating whether they are video games or not, but rather in exploring some of the challenges that arise when eradicating interactivity. Normally, interactivity and gameplay are aspects that we pay a lot of attention to when we play and when we study video games, and ignoring them allows other aspects to emerge to the forefront. In this presentation, I will highlight 2 of these aspects. One of the aspects that comes to the fore is the importance of other agencies beyond that of the human player. Skill, mastery, and control tend to be essential aspects of conventional video games. However, they disappear in video games you don't play, or you display, as Sonia Fisek will say. We could read this from a posthumanist perspective, understanding that there are other agents at play and that human beings are no longer central in the functioning of the world. In the cases we have seen, we are no longer necessary for the video game to continue its course. Another aspect that non-interactivity facilitates to bring to the forefront is aesthetic contemplation. When we play a conventional video game, we tend to observe the objects in the game based on their usefulness. We look at an item, evaluating whether it is collectible, or examine the qualities of landscapes, evaluating where we can take cover, where we can acquire an advantageous position, or which platforms to jump on to advance to the next level. However, this utilitarian view is incompatible with the tradition of aesthetics. The aesthetic experience can only happen if the relationship with the aesthetic object is not functional, not utilitarian. I am not saying that a conventional interactive video game cannot provide aesthetic experiences. Of course they can. But rather, that a non-interactive video game in which the relationship with the game objects is not utilitarian can facilitate achieving these artistic experiences. We find parallels between some of these ideas that I've just mentioned and the Ambience Act described by Alexander Galloway in Gaming is an algorithmic culture. As the state, he described the Ambience Act as the state of rest or balance in which some video games are maintained when the player stops playing and the game continues to run independently, producing micro movements and changes in the game world that make it feel alive. Later in this same text, in Game Culture, Galloway dedicated a chapter to video game mods made by artists such as Jody, Cory Arcangel, Anne-Marie Schleiner, and others, which he called counter-gaming, a movement that existed in opposition to and outside mainstream gaming. Galloway concluded his analysis by arguing that these mods were not really avant-garde, that they were visually progressive but reactionary in terms of gameplay, since they hindered it rather than contribute to its development. Many artist game modes, being completely non-interactive, rewrite the game, I quote Galloway, as a sort of primitive animation lacking any of the virtues of game design. Galloway thus called for radical gameplay, new grammars of action, alternative algorithms, and a critique of gameplay itself. I think that from an aesthetic and post-human perspective, living simulations stand out in how they diminish the importance of the human player, destroying the player's agency and control over the game world, and in doing so allow us to rethink the anthropocentrism of design and of study of video games, opening other possible paths that challenge the myths of agency, interactivity, and control that have accompanied the medium throughout its history. In my opinion, from this perspective, the inaction of living simulation is radical. My talk ends here. I hope you found it stimulating. I have walked you through my own artistic practice, how I began to incorporate video game technology into my practice because I wanted to make the viewer an active participant, and from there I have made a transition towards an almost opposite extreme, delimiting a distance, building autonomous digital worlds that are indifferent to the viewer. Lastly, I have tried to point out how this distance makes it possible to look at other aspects, processes and agents of video games beyond the human player. I think this opens new debates and challenges for game studies, which, in my view, are pretty exciting. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. I think we have time for a couple of questions, comments. So what questions do you have? Thank you, Serafín, very much for the thought-provoking talk. So don't be shy. Raise your hand. Oh, yeah. Well, we have here. Let's, Katja, let's start with you. I saw you first, so.
I think you
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Should I gather all the questions and reply afterwards, or one by one?
Just reply directly.
Oh, okay.
All right. So thank you very much for your talk. I, of course, found that very interesting because I also research walking simulators. And my question would be, what was your thought process? Why did you pick this genre of walking simulator for your art?
yeah, well, it's a long story and we don't have time, so I'll try to summarize. But the short version was that I was collecting corridors because I was looking at them, but from a not video games perspective from films, and started making a video, but I didn't have control of the camera, and I wanted to, because I wanted to make a video and it was film, so the camera was moving as the director of those films wanted to. And I started thinking about ways that I could move the camera through those corridors to look at things for pleasure visually. So I started looking into video game technology. I play video games since I was a kid and continue to do it. And walking simulators, I felt attracted to them, and I thought it was like the right format to not only be able to control the camera myself, but to give control to the viewer to explore those corridors at peace.
Thank you.
We have time for at least one more, so I think I'll go. Yeah.
So I have a design-oriented question. That is, in your first game or experience that you shown at the beginning, you make a maze among many scenes of film. Is there a logic in the choice of why did you choose these particular movies at that point? Is there a progression? How do you design that?
Yeah, so I spent 2 years of my life watching sci-fi films and collecting corridors. I have a huge collection. You can see it online in sci-fi-corridorarchive.com. And it was like I started artistic projects by collecting images. It's like I find it motivating. And when I decided, replying to Katya's questions, when I decided to make a video game, I decided to select some of them because I had like 1,000 of corridors, so I couldn't reproduce in 3D all of them. And I tried to have like a broad range, not only having films from the USA, for example, but from all parts of the world, from different times history, from different architectural styles, etc. And then I worked with a landscape with an architect to design a corridor that was like dizzy and complex enough to make the viewer get lost very, very, very easily and not find its way. Am I answering your question?
All right, I think that's all the time we have for you, Serafín. Thank you very much. Let's give Serafín again a hand. I'm left with a question that I will ask you in one of the breaks, probably, because it's very interesting. We typically understand play as something, a hands-on activity thing. And you're talking about play as very much a detached thing. So what does it say about play? I'm just throwing it out there for everyone to consider. But thank you. Next in the program, if you help my memory, it's Philip, I think, right? Yeah, okay. Philip, if you want to start setting up, I think you want to use your computer as well. I will start introducing.